Status
Pella
report.
had
What is
never
that
seen a
anomaly?
creature walk
Sir, it's off the
before.
charts, approaching fast.
In
All
her
hands, battle
40
stations,
years
prepare
as
for
a
intercept.
xenobiologist on Harmony Station, she had studied hundreds of species. The Delcani floated in their water spheres. The Minori glided on hover plates built into their exoskeletons. The Fenari, her own people, used anti-gravity harnesses because their hollow bones could not support their weight for long periods. Every civilized species in the galaxy had evolved past the primitive need to drag themselves across surfaces using nothing but muscle and bone. Then the humans arrived. Pella stood behind the reinforced observation glass of Docking Bay 7, her feathers pressed flat against her skull in fear. Around her, dozens of other station residents had gathered to witness the historic moment. First contact with a new species was always exciting, but the preliminary reports about these humans had turned excitement into dread. The airlock hissed open, and Pella felt her heart stop. 5 creatures walked out. They moved on 2 thick legs, their bodies upright and balanced, their arms swinging freely at their sides. Each step made a heavy sound against the metal floor. Thump, thump, thump. They wore no mobility assistance, no hover technology, no support frames. They simply walked as if gravity meant nothing to them. The one in front was a male with brown skin and short dark hair. He smiled at the gathered crowd, showing his teeth. Several Minari fainted immediately. Showing teeth was a threat display among most species. Ambassador Rila floated forward on her harness, trying to maintain diplomatic composure. Pella could see her mentor trembling. "Welcome to Harmony Station," Rila said, her voice translator working overtime. "I am Ambassador Rila of the Fenari Consortium. We greet you in peace." The human male dipped his head slightly. "Thank you, Ambassador. I am David Webb representing the United Earth Coalition. We are honored to be here." His voice was deep and resonant. Pella noticed that he breathed the station air directly without any filtration mask. The atmosphere contained trace amounts of 7 different compounds that were mildly toxic to most species. The humans did not seem to notice or care. "Please," Rila said, gesturing toward a waiting transport pod. "We have prepared vehicles to take you to your quarters." David Webb looked at the small pod, then at his team. A female human with red hair tied back in a tail spoke quietly to him. Pella's translator caught the words. "It is only 300 meters, sir. We could walk." "We could walk," David agreed. He turned back to Rila. "If it is not too much trouble, Ambassador, we would prefer to walk to our quarters. We have been sitting in our ship for weeks." Rila's beak opened and closed several times. "Walk the entire distance." "Is that a problem?" Pella watched Rila struggle to respond. 300 meters was a significant journey. Most species would need rest breaks and refreshment stations along the way, but the humans spoke of it as if it were nothing. "Of course not," Rila finally managed. "Please follow me." The procession moved through the station corridors, and Pella followed at a safe distance, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. She had read the reports about Earth, a Class 12 death world with gravity strong enough to crush a Fenari flat, an atmosphere filled with corrosive oxygen, temperature swings that ranged from frozen wastelands to boiling deserts, predators in every environment, diseases that evolved faster than medicine could cure them. These humans had survived all of that. They had thrived in it. Pella watched the female with red hair. Her name tag read Sarah. She walked with an easy grace, her eyes moving constantly, observing everything. At one point, she stumbled slightly on an uneven floor panel. Instead of falling, her body instantly corrected itself, muscles firing in perfect coordination to keep her upright. The reaction speed was terrifying. No other species could move that fast. Word spread through the station faster than the humans walked. By the time they reached the diplomatic quarters, crowds had gathered at every window and doorway. Some watched with curiosity. Most watched with fear. "Your quarters," Rila announced, stopping before a large doorway. We have adjusted the gravity to match your homeworld as closely as possible. We hope you find it comfortable." David Webb stepped inside and nodded. "This is perfect. Thank you, Ambassador." "We have prepared a welcome reception for tomorrow," Rila continued. "The Galactic Council is eager to meet you. There will be representatives from 47 species. We look forward to it." Pella noticed that the humans had not stopped smiling since they arrived. Among Fenari, a constant smile would indicate either mental instability or predatory intent. She made a note in her observation file. As the diplomatic group departed, Pella lingered. Through the window of the human quarters, she watched David Webb remove his formal jacket and roll his shoulders. He said something to his team that made them laugh. Then Sarah sat down on the floor, extended her legs, and began to stretch. Pella had seen predators stretch before hunts. The movement was unmistakable. She hurried away, her heart's pounding. Tomorrow, 47 species would gather in one room with these creatures. These persistent predators from a death world. These beings who walked without assistance, breathed poison, and smiled to show their teeth. Pella needed to warn someone, but deep down, she knew it was already too late. The humans had arrived, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. She began composing her first report. Initial observations on human locomotion and behavior. The galaxy needed to understand what was coming. The security footage lasted only 43 seconds, but it changed everything Pella thought she knew about biology. She sat alone in her research lab, watching the recording for the 12th time. The footage showed a maintenance corridor on level 7. Sarah, the red-haired human, was inspecting a damaged ventilation panel. Her fingers moved across the metal surface, searching for the source of a reported air leak. Then the panel gave way. A sharp edge sliced across Sarah's palm. Blood, red and thick, spilled from the wound. Any Fenari would have collapsed from shock. A Delcani would have required immediate medical intervention. The Minori did not even have liquid blood. They would simply have died. Sarah looked at her hand. She frowned. Then she reached into her pocket, pulled out a strip of cloth, and wrapped it around the wound. The entire process took less than 10 seconds. Then she went back to work. Pella paused the footage on Sarah's face. There was no sign of distress, no indication that she had just suffered a potentially fatal injury. She simply continued her task as if nothing had happened. Pella added to her growing report. Humans appear capable of surviving significant tissue damage. Further observation required. The door to her lab slid open. Ambassador Rila entered, her feathers ruffled with stress. "The council meeting was a disaster," Rila said, settling onto a perch. 3 delegates requested immediate transfer off the station. The Molten Ambassador has formally protested the presence of what he called apex predators in a peaceful zone. "What did the humans do?" "Nothing," Rila's voice carried frustration. "That is the problem. They did nothing wrong. They were polite. They were respectful. Ambassador Webb answered every question with patience. But every time he moved, every time he gestured, the other delegates flinched." Pella understood. She had attended the reception as an observer. She had watched David Webb shake hands with a Delcani representative. The Delcani had recoiled at his grip strength. Webb had not been trying to hurt anyone. He simply did not understand that what felt gentle to him felt crushing to others. "There is something else," Pella said. She turned her screen to show Rila the security footage. "Watch this." Rila watched in silence. When the footage ended, her beak hung open. She did not even stop working. "No, and I found more footage." Pella pulled up additional recordings. "This morning, one of the human engineers named Lewis worked in the cargo bay for 6 hours. 6 hours of continuous physical labor without rest. He lifted crates that weighed more than most Fenari." "That is impossible." "I thought so too, so I reviewed the medical files they submitted during first contact processing." Pella called up the data. Humans have a skeletal structure reinforced by a mineral called calcium. Their muscles operate through a chemical process that allows sustained output over long periods, and their cardiovascular system. She trailed off, unsure how to explain. Their hearts never stop, she finally said. From birth until death, the human heart beats constantly. They have no rest cycle. They cannot shut down their bodies to conserve energy like we do. They are always running, always burning, always moving forward. Rila stared at the data. How do they survive? They consume organic matter multiple times per day and convert it into energy. They breathe oxygen, the same gas that corrodes metal over time, and use it to fuel their cells. Their entire biology is built around one thing: endurance. They are not fast. They are not strong compared to some species, but they never stop. The weight of the words hung in the air. I found historical records in their cultural database, Pella continued. Before they developed technology, humans hunted by chasing prey until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. They would walk and run for hours, sometimes days, until their target could not flee anymore. Rila made a small sound of horror. Persistence predators. Yes, the term is already spreading through the station. A notification chimed on Pella's console. Security alert. Level 4, Section 9. Both Fenari hurried to the nearest observation screen. The footage showed a corridor near the human quarters. A crowd had gathered, maintaining a safe distance. In the center of the attention stood Sarah. She was running. Not fleeing from danger, not chasing anything. She was simply running down the corridor, her legs pumping, her arms swinging, her breath coming in steady rhythms. She reached the end of the corridor, turned around, and ran back. "What is she doing?" Rila whispered. Pella checked the sensor data. Her heart rate is elevated, her body temperature is rising, she is sweating. Is she ill? No, Pella watched with growing understanding. I think she is exercising. I think humans voluntarily push their bodies to the limit to maintain their physical capabilities. Sarah ran past the camera again. She had been running for 20 minutes now without slowing down. The gathered crowd watched in terrified silence. Some recorded the footage on their personal devices. Others simply fled. Pella added another note to her report. Humans engage in voluntary physical stress. Purpose unknown. Possibly a threat display. More observation required. But even as she wrote the words, Pella felt something shift inside her. Fear was giving way to fascination. These creatures were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They were terrifying, yes, but they were also remarkable. She needed to understand them better. She needed to get closer. The Galactic Council chamber fell silent when Representative Morath spoke the words that everyone had been thinking. They must be contained. Morath floated in his water sphere at the center of the chamber, his gelatinous body pulsing with each word. Around him, representatives from 47 species watched and listened. Some nodded in agreement. Others remained still, waiting to see which way the wind would blow. Ambassador David Webb sat alone at the human delegation table. His team had been asked to wait outside. The council wanted to speak with their leader directly, without the intimidating presence of multiple Death World predators. "With respect, Representative," David said calmly, "I do not understand what we have done wrong." "You exist," Morath replied. "Your very presence on this station is a threat to every being here. We have reviewed the data. Your species comes from a world that would kill any of us within minutes. You breathe poison. You survive injuries that would be fatal to any civilized race. You chase your prey until it dies from exhaustion." David took a slow breath. Pella, watching from the observer gallery, noticed how his chest expanded and contracted. So much air, so much oxygen flooding his system. "Representative Morath, those are historical practices from thousands of years ago. Humans no longer hunt in that way. We have technology now. We grow our food. We live in peace. But you could hunt us. Moreth's body rippled with agitation. You could chase any being on this station until they collapsed. Your endurance is beyond anything we have ever encountered. How can we trust creatures who evolve to exhaust their prey? Murmurs of agreement spread through the chamber. David Webb looked around at the assembled delegates. His expression shifted from confusion to something Pella had not seen on a human face before: sadness. "I understand your fear," David said quietly. "I do. We knew that first contact would be difficult. We knew that our biology might seem strange to species who evolved differently, but we came here in peace. We came to learn, to trade, to make friends." "Friends?" A delegate from the Vreen Collective let out a harsh laugh. "You consume the flesh of other creatures. You drink the reproductive secretions of animals. Your entertainment includes simulated violence and death." David paused. "You are talking about eating meat and drinking milk, and watching action movies. You do not deny it." "No, I do not deny it. But I do not see why these things make us dangerous. Many species have dietary needs that others find strange. Many species have cultural practices that seem unusual to outsiders." Representative Moreth moved closer to the human delegation table. "Let me ask you directly, Ambassador. If a Fenari ran from you, if they fled in terror, what would your instinct be?" David considered the question carefully. "Honestly, my instinct would be to chase them." Gasps filled the chamber. Several delegates rose to leave. "But," David continued, raising his voice, "my instinct would also be to ask if they were okay, to see if they needed help, to find out why they were running. Humans have instincts, yes, but we also have choice. We choose not to act on every instinct we feel. That is what makes us civilized." The chamber slowly settled. Pella leaned forward in her seat, fascinated by this window into human psychology. "You expect us to believe," Moreth said skeptically, "that you can simply choose not to hunt." "I expect you to judge us by our actions, not our biology." David stood up from his seat. The movement caused several nearby delegates to flinch backward. "In the 3 weeks since we arrived, has any human harmed anyone on this station? Has any human threatened anyone? Has any human done anything except try to be helpful and respectful?" Silence answered him. "We fixed your water recycling system on level 12. We helped repair the cargo loading mechanism in Bay 3. Our medical officer treated a Minori child who had a shell fracture. We have done nothing but try to contribute to this community." Pella remembered reading about that shell fracture case. The human doctor had worked for hours, carefully repairing the delicate exoskeleton with precision that amazed the Minori physicians. The child had made a full recovery. "Words are easy," Moreth said. "Actions can be faked. How do we know you are not simply waiting for the right moment to reveal your true nature?" David Webb looked directly at Moreth. "You do not know, you cannot know. Just like we cannot know if any species here might turn hostile, trust has to start somewhere. We are asking for a chance to prove ourselves." The vote was called 2 hours later. 29 species voted to restrict human movement on the station. 18 voted against restrictions. The motion passed. David Webb accepted the result with quiet dignity. As he left the chamber, he passed close to the observer gallery where Pella sat. He looked up at her and nodded. It was a small gesture, an acknowledgement from one being to another. Pella nodded back. She had made her decision. Fear was no longer enough. She needed to understand these creatures who chose peace despite being built for war. Tomorrow, she would request an official meeting with the human delegation. The explosion came without warning. Pella was in her lab reviewing her notes when the station shook. Alarms screamed. Emergency lights flashed red across every corridor. A computerized voice spoke in calm, measured tones that did nothing to hide the horror of its message. "Coolant breach in Sector 8, toxic gas spreading. All residents evacuate immediately. Estimated time to critical exposure, 18 minutes. Pella grabbed her emergency harness and flew toward the nearest exit. The corridors were chaos. Fenari darted through the air on their gravity units. Delcani rolled in their water spheres, bumping against walls in their panic. Minori skittered on their many legs, their shells clicking against the floor. But Sector 8 was residential. Hundreds of beings lived there, the elderly, the young, those who could not move quickly. Pella reached the main observation deck and stopped. Through the windows, she could see the lower levels filling with a green mist. The coolant gas was heavier than air. Sinking toward the bottom of the station, it would reach the residential quarters in minutes. The evacuation pods cannot navigate the damaged corridors, someone shouted. The debris is blocking the paths. What about the emergency vehicles? Too large, they cannot fit through the gaps. Pella watched in horror as the green mist crept lower. She could see shapes moving inside it. Residents trapped by the spreading poison. Residents who would die if help did not reach them. Then she heard the sound. Footsteps. Heavy, rhythmic footsteps coming from behind her. She turned and saw the humans. All 5 of them stood at the entrance to the observation deck. They had stripped off their formal clothing and wore simple underlayers. David Webb was speaking rapidly into a communication device. Sarah, take Lewis and head for the eastern residential block. I will go west with the others. We have maybe 15 minutes before the gas reaches critical concentration. Sarah nodded. Her face was set in an expression Pella had never seen before. Determination, focus, no fear at all. The gas is toxic, Pella heard herself say. You cannot survive exposure. David looked at her. How toxic? What is the lethal concentration? Pella checked her data pad with trembling wings. Continuous exposure for more than 4 minutes causes permanent respiratory damage. 6 minutes is fatal. Humans can hold their breath for 2 to 3 minutes, David said. We go in, grab as many people as we can and get out before we need to breathe. Then we go back in. That is insane. That is the only option. David turned to his team. Remember your training, short bursts. Do not try to be heroes. Get people out and get yourself out. Ready. They were already running. Pella watched in disbelief as the humans sprinted toward the contaminated zone. They moved faster than she had ever seen any creature move on foot. Their legs drove them forward with relentless power. Their arms pumped at their sides. They reached the edge of the gas cloud and dove in without hesitation. The observation deck filled with watching aliens. No one spoke. No one could look away. Seconds passed. Then a figure emerged from the green mist. It was Sarah, carrying 2 small Fenari children under her arms. She set them down gently, gasped for air, and ran back into the cloud. More humans emerged. Lewis had a Delcani in his arms, the water sphere cracked and leaking. He handed the injured being to waiting medical staff and disappeared back into the poison. David Webb came out carrying an elderly Minori on his back. The old creature's shell was damaged. David's skin was red and irritated from the gas exposure. He did not slow down. He deposited his passenger and ran back. Again and again they went, in and out of the toxic cloud. Each time they emerged, they brought survivors. Each time they went back, they pushed themselves harder. Pella counted. The humans made 17 trips into the contaminated zone. They saved 63 lives. 63 beings who would have died without the intervention of creatures everyone feared. When the emergency containment finally sealed the breach, the humans collapsed on the observation deck floor. They were covered in chemical burns. Their lungs wheezed with each breath. Sarah was bleeding from a deep cut on her forehead. But they were smiling. Medical teams rushed forward to treat them. A Fenari doctor approached Sarah with a treatment kit. Sarah waved her away. Check on the others first, Sarah said. Her voice was rough from the gas exposure. We will heal, make sure everyone else is okay. Pella moved closer. She had studied humans for weeks. She had documented their terrifying biology, but she had never understood them until this moment. They were predators, yes, but they chose their prey, and today they had chosen to hunt death itself. Why? Pella asked softly. Why did you risk your lives for species that fear you, species that voted to restrict your freedom? David Webb looked up at her. His eyes were red and watering from the chemical exposure, but his voice was steady. Because it was the right thing to do, he said simply. Because we could help, because that is what humans do. Pella had no response. She simply stood there, watching the humans rest, and began to rewrite everything she thought she knew about them. Pella's report spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. She had titled it simply, Understanding the Human. In it, she described everything she had observed over the past months, the walking, the running, the healing, the endurance, but she framed it differently than anyone had before. She wrote about choice. Humans were apex predators, she explained. This was true. Their bodies were weapons forged on a death world. Their stamina exceeded any other known species. Their ability to recover from injury bordered on regeneration. But none of this defined who they were. What defined humans was what they chose to do with their abilities. They chose to save 63 lives in a toxic gas cloud. They chose to repair broken systems on a station that feared them. They chose to treat an injured child of a species that had voted to restrict their freedom. Pella wrote about the human concept of empathy. She had interviewed David Webb extensively after the rescue. He had explained that humans felt the pain of others as if it were their own. When they saw someone suffering, something inside them demanded action. It is not a choice, David had told her. Not really. We cannot watch someone hurt and do nothing. It would feel like we were hurting ourselves. The report went viral on the Galactic Network. Within days, it had been translated into 400 languages. Comments flooded in from every corner of known space. Some beings remained skeptical. They argued that the rescue was a calculated move to improve human reputation. They claimed it was predatory behavior disguised as heroism. But more and more voices began to question the old narrative. A Delcani philosopher wrote a response piece arguing that any species capable of empathy across such biological differences could not be considered dangerous. A Minori historian drew parallels between human behavior and ancient legends of protective guardian spirits. A collective of Fenari artists created a visual tribute to the rescue, showing humans running into danger while others fled. 3 weeks after Pella published her report, something remarkable happened. Representative Morath requested a meeting with Ambassador Webb. Pella attended as an observer, her heart pounding with nervous anticipation. Morath floated in his water sphere on one side of a small conference room. David sat calmly on the other. I have read the xenobiologist's report, Morath began. His tone was different now, less hostile, more uncertain. I have also reviewed the rescue footage many times. David nodded but said nothing. I still do not understand, Morath admitted. Your biology tells me you are dangerous. Every instinct I possess says I should flee from you, but your actions tell a different story. We are both things, David said. We are dangerous and we are kind. We are predators and we are protectors. Humans contain contradictions, we always have. How do you live with that? David considered the question. We struggle. Every day, every human makes choices about who they want to be. Some of us choose badly. We have wars. We have violence. We have caused great harm throughout our history. But we also have compassion. We have sacrifice. We have love that crosses every boundary we can imagine. Morath was silent for a long moment. The Delcani have no such contradictions. We are what we are. Our nature is fixed. That sounds peaceful. It is limiting. Morath's body rippled in what might have been a sigh. We have not evolved in millions of years. We have not changed. We have not grown. Perhaps that is why your species frightens us so much. You represent possibility. You can become anything. Is that so terrible? It is terrifying. Moreth moved closer to the table. But perhaps terror is not always bad. Perhaps it can push us to become something more as well. The meeting ended with Morath requesting that the council reconsider the restrictions on human movement. The vote was scheduled for the following week. Pella walked with David through the station corridors afterward. Around them, the usual crowds parted to let them pass. But something had changed. The fear was still there, but it was mixed with something else now: curiosity, respect, even in some eyes, gratitude. "Do you think the vote will go differently this time?" Pella asked. David shrugged. "I do not know. Changing minds takes time. Changing hearts takes longer, but we will keep trying. We always do. Because you cannot help it." David smiled. It was not a threat display. Pella understood that now. It was an expression of warmth, of connection, of hope. "Because we choose not to give up," he said. "Because we believe that understanding is always possible. Because every being we meet might become a friend if we just give them the chance." Pella added one final note to her report that evening. Human persistence is not limited to physical endurance. They apply the same relentless determination to building relationships, changing minds, and creating peace. They will chase understanding the same way their ancestors chased prey, until they catch it. She submitted the update and waited for the galaxy to respond. 1 year changed everything. Pella stood at the starting line of the Harmony Station marathon, her legs trembling beneath her. Around her, beings from 17 different species waited for the signal. Fenari on reinforced leg braces, Delcani in specialized mobile spheres, Minori with modified shell structures, all of them preparing to do something that would have seemed impossible 12 months ago. They were preparing to walk. Sarah stood beside Pella, her hand resting gently on the Fenari's shoulder. Over the past year, Sarah had become Pella's trainer, her teacher, and her friend. She had shown Pella that walking was not about strength or endurance. It was about taking one step at a time. "You are going to be fine," Sarah said. "Remember what I taught you. Breathe steady, find your rhythm. Do not think about the distance. Just think about the next step." "The next step," Pella repeated. Her translator converted the human phrase into her native language, but she had learned to think in human patterns, one step at a time. The signal sounded. The marathon began. Pella moved forward. Her reinforced leg braces supported her hollow bones, allowing her to walk without her gravity harness for the first time in her life. Each step sent strange sensations through her body: weight, pressure, connection to the ground beneath her. She understood now why humans walked everywhere. It was not about efficiency. It was about feeling present. Every step was an act of will. Every meter covered was an achievement earned. The marathon route wound through the station corridors, past observation windows showing the stars beyond, through parks filled with plants from 100 worlds. Pella passed crowds of cheering spectators. She saw children pointing and waving. She saw adults who had once fled from humans now standing alongside them, united in support. At the halfway point, Pella's legs began to burn. The sensation was unfamiliar and uncomfortable. Her instincts screamed at her to stop, to rest, to return to her gravity harness. Sarah appeared beside her. "You are doing great, keep going." "It hurts." "I know, that is how you know you are getting stronger." Pella pushed forward, one step, another. The final stretch approached. Pella could see the finish line ahead. Ambassador Rila waited there, her feathers bright with pride. Beside her stood David Webb, his arm in a sling from a recent accident. Even injured, he had insisted on attending. Pella crossed the finish line with tears streaming down her face. She had done it. She had walked the entire marathon. A Fenari, a species that had never walked, had proven that anything was possible. Sarah hugged her carefully, mindful of her delicate bones. "You did it. You actually did it." "We did it," Pella corrected, "together." Later that evening, the Galactic Council convened for a historic announcement. The chamber was packed with representatives from every member species. David Webb stood at the central podium, looking out at the assembled beings. "1 year ago, humanity arrived at this station," he began. "You feared us. You restricted us. You questioned whether we could ever be trusted. I do not blame you for that fear. We are strange. We are different. We come from a world that most of you cannot imagine surviving." He paused, letting his gaze sweep across the room. "But over this past year, something remarkable happened. You gave us a chance. Not all of you. Not at first. But enough of you opened your minds to possibility. Enough of you chose to see us as individuals rather than threats. And in return, we showed you who we really are." The chamber was silent. Every eye focused on the human ambassador. "We are protectors," David continued. "We evolved to chase prey, but we choose to chase justice. We developed endurance to survive our harsh world, but we use that endurance to help those in need. We are apex predators, but we protect the weak. We are death world survivors, but we bring life wherever we go." He straightened his shoulders despite his injury. "Today, the Fenari Consortium has formally invited humanity to join the inner circle of the Galactic Council. This is an honor that has not been extended to any species in 300 years. We accept this honor with humility and gratitude." Cheers erupted throughout the chamber. Species that had once trembled at the sight of humans now rose to applaud them. After the ceremony, Pella found David in the observation deck. He stood alone, looking out at the stars. She walked up beside him, still getting used to the feeling of her legs supporting her weight. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "The future," David said. "1 year ago, the galaxy watched in terror as humans walked. Now we walk together. I wonder what the next year will bring." Pella looked out at the stars. In the reflection of the glass, she could see beings of different species moving through the corridors behind them. Fenari walking on their new braces. Delcani rolling alongside human friends. Children of various races playing together, chasing each other, laughing. "Whatever comes," she said, "we will face it together." David smiled. That warm, hopeful expression that she had once mistaken for a threat. "Together," he agreed, "one step at a time." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the galaxy spin slowly past the windows. No longer predator and prey. No longer threat and victim. Just two friends, walking the same path toward a future neither could have imagined alone. The galaxy had watched in terror as humans walked. Now the galaxy walked with them.